So the next one is, yeah, as I say, more messy, and I'll go through the materials we need first. So this is just an old, very old, rusty baking tray. You could use that. You could use a Tupperware, quite a large Tupperware box. You need something with a smooth surface that you can kind of use to put paint on that you can then wash off. So I like using something that'll be washed and reused, but you can use, I don't know if you'll be able to see this at all, but it's like an acetate sheet.
Yes.
So if you want to buy something and hand them out, these will wipe clean as well, and you could stack them away. So anything smooth that you can paint onto and take a print off of is what we're looking for here. So that's the sort of printing surface. And then you want to use acrylic paint. So we need something a bit thicker now, not watercolor. I have tried using poster paints, but they're, I think, just don't pick up the detail quite as nicely. So you can buy quite big tubes of acrylic paint in all sorts of colors. This is like a metallic green. I'm going for more, festive colors. Red, but you can also buy them in little tubes. I think for this one, you probably want bigger tubes because you will use quite a large amount of paint. You also want to have found some nice leaves or some pressed flowers. So I've got a cotinus here, or cotinus, depending on who you speak to. All sorts of different autumnal leaves. I love pressed flowers, so I can't even remember what flower this is. I've used this one, I'd say maybe 5 times now, and it doesn't seem to be giving up on me yet. Same for this one, another pressed flower. And ferns worked really well for this activity too. That one's been used once at least. So what you want to do is get your acrylic paint and put a sort of good blob of it onto your printing surface. So you'll see that there. And then I'm using quite a nice flat brush. It's not huge, but it's nice and flat, because what you're aiming for is to have a nice sort of smooth layer of paint. People may or may not need a hand with this, and you might need to go back and get more paint. Feels very strange at first painting a box or a metal tin, but you'll see how it goes. So this one it can take a bit of trial and error to get the right thickness of paint. So I would explain that to people when you're doing it with them so they don't get put off, that this is all a bit of trial and error, and they might want to have lots of scrap paper around. So I've got some bits everywhere that I've been using earlier just to kind of try it out and see how it goes, so I can find the right leaf that I like. So for this one, you can use any paper you want to print onto. So it could be thicker card or it could be thin paper, whatever you happen to have. And you also want to have some old scrap paper or newspaper, just for the kind of mess element, and also to layer over the top of the plant when you're taking the print off it. So I think I'm just going to put a wee bit more paint actually, because I can see it drying in front of my eyes. You can paint directly onto the leaves and just print them like that. I've done that with children before, and that works fine. You just don't get quite as detailed a print as you do this way. So you then want to get I'm using a pressed flower here, lay it onto your printing surface, make sure it's nice and flat. And then I've got a bit of old newspaper here that you lay over the top, and you just kind of smooth over with your hands. And if you don't have any other kits, doing that will be enough. But I have found that using a rolling pin helps, and that might help for people who struggle to kind of press evenly all over. So I'm just going back and forward a few times just to try and get the plant to pick up as much of the paint as possible. You could use a nice piece of paper to do this bit and get almost the reverse of a print. So that, I think that's, as I say, I'm not an artist. I think that's something along the lines of mono printing, where you get the silhouette. But instead, I'm just going for one at the moment. So you can kind of see the idea. You might get more of a silhouette, but that's just my scrap newspaper. And then you want to try, and you could either do this with tweezers, but I just go for it with my hands and peel the plant off. And then you want to place it on a piece of paper like that. Again, use paper, so make sure you don't use the bit that's covered in paint, because you'll end up covering your nice print with all the paint. So you can either fold it inside the bit of newspaper you've already used, or use a nice clean piece, and then just press that over the top. Again, smooth it down. And then you can use the rolling pin again. So again, I'm just going back and forward a few times. You don't want to use a rolling pin that you're going to use again for cooking, ideally, because as you can see, it's getting covered in paint, unless you're using some nice natural paints. Then you take the newspaper off, and we'll see how it's come up. So again, you can use tweezers, or you can go for it with your fingers. See if we can lift this a bit closer for you. And then you just try and peel it away. And it should give you, it's worked quite well, a nice print. And then you can use that plant again and do more prints. So I've used that plant another day and did it with green. So I managed to get this kind of print. So again, I think this would work quite nicely. If you've got people who are able to print over a larger area, they could use this for wrapping paper or cards or artwork. I'll show you one that I did with leaves. So some of them come out messier than others, but I don't mind them messy. These are little oak leaves. That one had far too much paint on it, but I'm going to show you the mistakes as well. And I think maybe, I don't know, this one's quite nice. And what else? I tried painting a piece of paper with watercolors, letting it dry, and then printing on top. And I thought that was quite nice as well. So again, you could then cut your leaf out. So you could cut it out to follow the shape of the leaf. You could make decorations with these, attach them to a string and make a big garland, or add them to a card. There's lots and lots of different things you could do with these. I've got some stuck up on my pin board near my desk where I work. So the cutting out part's quite fun as well. So you could extend this activity by letting things dry and then cutting them out. So that's that one. So as I said at the beginning, you will need somewhere to put everything to dry. I'm kind of stacking them all around my desk. And the other thing I've found is that the plants and the leaves that have had the paint on them, you can keep using them. You'll start to see eventually they will disintegrate. But if you don't want to do that, you can also let them dry and glue them onto cards as well. They make quite nice cards. I thought the fern was quite pretty themselves. So there's lots of bits of this process you can use, and you can try it out in all sorts of different ways.